What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and today we're going to continue the History of series as we look at the history of the modern Ottawa Senators. Now, this is not going to focus on the original Ottawa Senators. They were a team that existed from 1883 until 1934. They will get a video down the road when we look at some defunct teams. So, again, if you're interested in that team, that'll be a future video. Right now, we're looking at the modern-day Ottawa Senators. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So in late 1987, at an executive meeting for the company Terrace Investments Limited, one man pitched an idea. The city of Ottawa should campaign to receive one of the NHL's expansion teams. Now, the NHL had planned to expand the league in the 1990s, and Ottawa, having previously had a team, seemed like a logical location. It made sense. Now, the president of Terrace Investments Limited, a real estate developer named Bruce Firestone, thought about the idea, and he decided to act on it. While neither Firestone nor the company had the financial assets to maintain an NHL team, they did have a plan. The plan was to build a mini-city of sorts, named West Terrace, centered around an NHL arena and hotel developments. Now, their strategy was pretty simple. Buy the site, win the franchise, build the building. In June of 1989, Firestone made his intentions public. He also stated that he intended to revive the old nickname of Senators. Now, he did so after receiving permission from the previous owner's descendants. Now, the city of Ottawa was granted an expansion team. However, things were not crystal clear. First, the Ontario government had to approve of this project. Now, the problem was, the land that Firestone had seen and basically earmarked was set aside for agriculture. So the governor of Ontario was not willing to aid the Senators franchise, and he set rules that did not allow the building of an entire city like Firestone had imagined. This really hurt Terrace Investments Limited. Finally, after securing multiple loans from mostly American-based companies, the project was underway, and the stadium, named the Pedalium, was complete. The stage was set, and the Senators were prepared to take part in the 1992 NHL expansion draft. So now we enter the 1990s, and right off the bat, the Senators became a bit of a snake-bitten franchise. During the expansion draft, anything that could go wrong for Ottawa went wrong. Unlike today, expansion drafts, they did not produce too much talent. As a result, most expansion teams, they struggled right out of the gate. Now, basically, you look at today's expansion drafts, and they have set rules. You can only protect X amount of players. Back in the day, they didn't have those rules. You just had to expose one, for example, the goaltender situation. You just had to expose one goalie who had played at least one game at the NHL level in the previous season. So what some teams would do, and I believe it was Chicago that did this, is they signed like an old veteran. They had him appear in a single game the year before in the 91-92 season, and then they said, oh, hey, yeah, he played in a game for us, so yeah, here you go, take him. So basically, the NHL kind of had to put a stop to that, but expansion drafts back then, they were just completely different. You didn't get the talent that you got today. So as if that wasn't bad enough, the Senators also had to deal with a technical glitch. So basically, they decided, computers were in their infancy, and the Senators decided, you know what, we love this computer thing. Let's put all of our draft ideas, all of our lists, all of our rankings on a computer, on a laptop. Sounds great. The only problem was the laptop failed to boot up during the draft. It's believed that it was dead, and unfortunately, nobody had a charger, and this was 92, so, chargers weren't everywhere like we have them today. So basically, management started to panic, and they did not have a backup plan. As crazy as it sounds, no one had thought to print out the papers beforehand. No one had any handwritten notes whatsoever. It became a mess. There was no backup computer. So they ended up kind of going off of memory, and they would select some ineligible players. Now, what they had to do is they could not keep said players, and they had to select other players. So this would help the other expansion team at the time, the Tampa Bay Lightning, but once more, the talent in this draft was just not good. So basically what they ended up having to do is they went around, they were kind of panicking, and they would go, all right, we want to pick this guy. And then it would be like, oh, hey, wait a second now. You're trying to pick a player from the Bruins organization, but you already picked a player from the Bruins, and Tampa already picked a player from the Bruins, so the Bruins are done. You can't pick anyone from the Bruins. Or they went to pick a guy who was protected by his team. So, yeah, it wasn't pretty. Now, on the bright side, the team was given the second overall pick in the 1992 draft, and with that pick, they would select center Alexei Yashin. Now, due to construction problems with the Palladium, the team was set to play its home games in the Ottawa Civic Center originally. Now, they would play their first ever game of the rebooted franchise on October 8th, 1992, against the Montreal Canadiens. Shockingly, the Senators pulled off the upset, winning the game 5-3. Unfortunately, this would be a brutal first season for the franchise, as the club finished with a 10-win, 70-loss, and 4 ties record. The team did face a controversy, too. The team's president, Bruce Firestone, stated that the Senators had intentionally lost some games to get a better draft pick. This was obviously a violation of NHL rules and eventually led to the NHL implementing a lottery system. Thanks, Ottawa. So the player that Ottawa had tanked for was center Alexander Daigle. Now, following their inaugural season, Firestone stepped down as president of the club, in part due to the scandal that he had created when he made that comment. So the team had a rough season in the 93-94 year, but they did have some hope, as Yashin, he looked good as a rookie. The following season saw the Senators once more sink to the bottom of the league. Still, Yashin looked like a future star. Also, right-wing Daniel Alfredsson would make his debut for the club. Early in the 95-96 season, the Senators were in a state of turmoil. Yashin, clearly the team's best player, was holding out for a new contract. Another top draft pick publicly stated that he would never play for the Senators. Management had to clean house, and fast. They fired coaches and signed Yashin to an extension, and they also would trade said other player. Now, in January of 1996, the Senators would leave the Civic Center to play in the Palladium. Now, after about a month after this, the stadium would get renamed to the Coral Center after sponsorships were finally approved. Now, the team may not have had a great season, but they did have some optimism with the young duo of Alexei Yashin and Daniel Alfredsson. Now, the 96-97 season gave Senators fans something to celebrate, as the team rebounded nicely and qualified for the playoffs with a 31-36-15 record. They were the 7th seed. Now, the Senators played good that year in the playoffs, and they would force the 2-seed Buffalo Sabres to a Game 7. Unfortunately, Yashin would score an infamous own goal, and the Sabres would win this game in overtime. Still, the future was bright. The 97-98 Senators played well and once more made the playoffs. During that season, the club would actually end up trading away Alexander Daigle, as he just wasn't doing that great. And to this day, he is still viewed as one of the bigger busts in the NHL's history, modern history at least. Now, their second trip to the playoffs went a bit better, as they snuck past the first round, upsetting the New Jersey Devils in 6 games. Now, this team would lose in the semifinals, but they put on a show for the fans. The 98-99 Senators produced and passed 100 points for the first time in their franchise history, getting 44 wins while adding 23 losses and 15 ties. Unfortunately, they were swept in the first round of the playoffs by the Buffalo Sabres. Now, this led to the 99-2000 season. This year started off poorly for Ottawa, and basically what happened is Alexei Yashin was locked in a contract dispute for the 3rd time in 5 years at this point. So Yashin, he decided to hold out for the entire season with plans to either play overseas or file for free agency following the season. The Senators, they were not happy with the situation, but they pressed on, and they would end up basically suspending him for the season. The NHL suspended him for the season, and basically he wasn't allowed to play overseas because the NHL had suspended him. So that turned into a bit of a messy situation. And the team, they still played decently without their captain, and they made the playoffs as a 6th seed. However, they were knocked out in the first round once more, this time by the Toronto Maple Leafs in 6 games. So in their first decade, they did not make any Stanley Cup appearances. Can't fault that against them, though. Still, The future was looking good. Now, Yashin would return to the Senators in time for the 2000-2001 season, as he was contractually obliged to, and the league basically forced him to. He was far from a fan favorite, though. He would constantly get booed wherever he played, even at home. No one in the NHL wanted this guy. Every fan was mad at him. Now, the Senators, despite this off the field or off the ice controversy, they had a great season. They would win their division, and they finished the year with 109 points. They would once more, though, be swept in the first round. Following the 2000-2001 season, Alexei Yashin was traded away in a blockbuster trade. This will be discussed in the very near future, and basically what this would bring in is this would bring in a couple of assets, which included the second overall pick in the 2001 draft and defenseman Zdeno Chara. So that second overall pick would be used to select center Jason Spezza. So these are two guys who are very well known, and they both still played through the 2021 season. So always good to know that. Now the 01-02 Senators, they did regress slightly as a team, and they ended the year with 94 points. They did make the playoffs, and they managed to upset the Flyers in the first round, but they fell to the Maple Leafs for the third consecutive year in the playoffs, unfortunately. So during the 2002-2003 campaign, the franchise would publicly file bankruptcy. Now, they did this on January 9th, 2003. The NHL ended up stepping in, and they helped keep the franchise afloat. Now, despite this, the Senators actually had a franchise best 113 points in the regular season. This was enough to earn them their first ever President's Trophy. The Senators took care of their old friend Yashin and his Islanders in the first round of the playoffs, and they managed to knock off the Flyers for the second year in a row in the second round. Now, round 3 saw them face off against the New Jersey Devils in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Devils would take this series in 7 games. This was the closest that the modern-day Senators had come to getting to the Stanley Cup at to that point, and the fans were eager for more. Ottawa had another good year in the 03-04 season as they made the playoffs once more. Unfortunately, Toronto ended their season for the 4th time in 5 years. Change was necessary. They decided to fire their head coach, and they would replace him with Brian Murray. The Senators looked primed for another strong season as they had signed goaltender Dominik Hasek. However, the 2004-2005 season did not occur due to a lockout. This somewhat slowed down their momentum. Now, many had pegged Ottawa as Cup favorites heading into the 05-06 season. Things did start off well for the team, as they won 19 of their first 22 games. In January of 2006, the stadium that they played at was renamed to Scotiabank Place. Bad news came out during the 2006 Winter Olympics, though, as their goaltender Dominik Hasek injured his hip. He would not play again for the Senators, as the club chose to let him walk after the season came to a close. Despite the loss of Hasek, rookie goaltender Ray Emery, he would step up, and he helped Ottawa with a now franchise best mark of 113 points. They won their first round matchup in the 05-06 season, but they fell to the Buffalo Sabres in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Following the playoff loss, Zdeno Chara would leave the team via free agency. The 06-07 season started off average for Ottawa, but they turned it around after the All-Star break, and they ended up toppling 100 points once more. They easily knocked out the Penguins in the first round, and they knocked off the second-seeded Devils in a 4-1 series in the semifinals. Now, this set them up for a rematch against the top-seeded Buffalo Sabres in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Senators surprised many by taking a commanding 3-0 series lead, and the team would end up winning the series 4-1. This meant that the Ottawa Senators had clinched their first ever trip to the Stanley Cup Finals in 80 years. There, they met with the Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim took the series 4-1, putting an end to Ottawa's chances on winning a cup. Now, Ottawa, they still had a bright future. Brian Murray, he ends up getting promoted to GM from the coach role after the season. Unfortunately, though, it was not meant to be for the Senators, as the team, they would slump after a solid start, and Murray, he was stepped down from GM to take over, or he took over the coaching role as well. Now, the team would barely make the playoffs, and they were swept in the first round by Pittsburgh. Murray decided he's done with coaching once more, and he went back to a GM role after the loss. The Senators hit the ground running in the 08-09 season, finishing with 83 points and missing the playoffs. This it was a good start, but nothing happened. They faltered. Now, during the 2009-2010 season, defenseman Erik Karlsson would make his debut for the club. The team rebounded nicely in the 09-10 season, ending the year with 94 points. They fell to Pittsburgh once more in the playoffs, 4-2. A brief rebuild was on the horizon for Ottawa. Now, during the 2000s, the Senators did make one Stanley Cup, but they lost it. So now we enter the 2010s, and the new decade started off poorly for Ottawa, as the team had a rough stretch in January of 2011. So this led to a fire sale of multiple players, in exchange for draft picks. Now, one move they made led them to get goaltender Craig Anderson. The Senators finished last place in their division, though, that year. Many people wrote off the Senators for the upcoming 11-12 season, but Ottawa came up to prove people wrong. They ended the season with 92 points, which led them back to the playoffs. They were the 8th seed, though, but they put up a fight against the top-seeded Rangers, forcing a Game 7. The Senators overcame multiple injuries in the 12-13 season, and they made the playoffs once more as a 7th seed this time. There, they upset the 2-seeded Montreal Canadiens, but they were eliminated by the Pittsburgh Penguins in the semifinals. So after the 2012-13 season came to an end, right wing Daniel Alfredsson left the team as a free agent. He would retire after one season away, so he did end up signing a one-day contract with the team, all things considered, at the end of his career. So that same day, the team would trade for right wing Bobby Ryan. The stadium was also renamed once more to the Canadian Tire Center, which it is still named to this day. So the 2013-14 season saw Ottawa finish with 88 points outside of the playoff picture. After the season, center Jason Spezza was traded away. So, yeah. The Senators had a respectable year in the 2014-15 season, making the playoffs with 99 points. They would, once more, fall in the first round. The team did not see much success during the 15-16 season, as they ended the year with 85 points, once more missing out on the playoffs. After the season came to an end, general manager Brian Murray would retire. He was battling stage 4 colon cancer, so it was unfortunate for him. He had done a great job for the Ottawa Senators, though. So the 2016-17 Senators were one of the biggest surprises in recent NHL history. The team ended the year with 98 points, making the playoffs. Once there, they took care of the Bruins 4-2 and the Rangers 4-2. This put them in the Eastern Conference Finals against the heavily favored Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, this series surprisingly made it to a Game 7. To add more stress, Game 7 went into overtime. And then a second overtime. Unfortunately, the Penguins would win this game, and this really just seemed to destroy any momentum that Ottawa had, and they went back into a rebuild. The 2017-18 season was disappointing. Multiple key players from the previous year, none of them big enough to mention here, had left the team, either via trades or free agency. And as a result, the Senators only recorded 67 points. Just before the 2018-19 season began, defenseman Erik Karlsson was traded to San Jose in a blockbuster deal. Once more, this will be mentioned in a previous trade breakdown, or in a future trade breakdown, so definitely stay tuned for that. The Senators, now they had an even worse year that year without their captain, finishing with only 64 points. The team did slightly rebound in the pandemic-shortened 1920 season, recording 62 points. Now, following that season, both goaltender Craig Anderson and right wing Bobby Ryan would leave the team. They did not make any Stanley Cup appearances in the 2010s, but they did come close. So now we get the 2020s, and of course right now we've only had the 2021 season. In the 2021 season, the Senators just started off ice cold, but they did have a nice little rebound towards the middle of the season, middle of the season, but they just fell off the cliff after. And they did heat up again towards the end of the season, but they finished 6th out of 7 in the North Division in the 2021 season, finishing the year with 51 points. So they were 12 points out of the playoff picture, or 8 points out of the playoff picture. Still, this team has a lot of young, talented pieces on it. Of course, we have Brady Tkachuk still. He's got a bright future. So the modern day Senators have made a single Stanley Cup appearance, but they did not win it, unfortunately for them. 3 people with ties to the modern Ottawa Senators are currently inducted in the Hall of Fame. Now, they have 4 retired numbers as well. So we have number 4, who's retired for Chris Phillips, number 8, which is retired for Frank Finnegan. Now, Finnegan was honored for his contributions to the original Senators franchise, and he was the last remaining member of the original franchise to be alive. He was originally a part of like the whole hype for when the Ottawa Senators came back, but he would pass away before they would play their first game. But he had become such a big figure that they decided it's a good idea to retire his number. They also retired number 11, Daniel Alfredsson, and of course, the league-wide retired number 99 for Wayne Gretzky. So that was the history of the Ottawa Senators, the modern Ottawa Senators. Now, this is a team that's far from perfect, but they're still a good team. You know, they've had some ups and downs. They've made 1 Stanley Cup in their relatively short history, and it's always tough to come back from a glitch right at the beginning of your existence, but the Senators kind of did it. They've been around for some time. You know, they've probably the biggest thing that the Senators are known for is the goal that the Penguins scored to end the series, the Eastern Conference Finals. Of course, there's also Yashin. So they're also, affiliated with Alexander Daigle. So it's been a tough time for this team, but still, they do have a bright future right now. The real question is, will they stay in Ottawa for much longer? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good rest of your day.